I never thought I'd be in this situation. I'm a 17-year-old girl, and just a few months before starting university, my parents dropped a bombshell on me. They told me I'd have to figure out how to pay for my tuition myself. I was shocked because I always assumed they would support me just like they did for my older sister. She went to business school a few years ago, and my parents covered all her expenses. I thought it was a given that they would do the same for me, especially since they're financially stable. My dad's an engineer, and my mom's a nurse, so money was never really an issue in our house. I felt betrayed and confused. Why was I being treated differently? My sister and I are 6 years apart, and I always looked up to her. When she went to college, my dad proudly talked about how he spared no expense to send her to the best business school. He saw it as an investment that would pay off in the future. I thought I would get the same treatment, but I was wrong. I was planning to major in psychology, not business, so I understood that my situation was a bit different. Still, I couldn't help but feel hurt and confused. When I confronted my parents about the tuition, they told me I needed to pay for it myself. They suggested I work or take out student loans. I was furious. I had always believed they would support me, just like they did for my sister. I felt like they were being unfair, and that they didn't care about my future as much as they did about my sister's. I couldn't understand why they were suddenly changing the rules for me. It felt like a huge betrayal. A few weeks after this issue came up, my parents told me there was a reason for everything. They asked me to stay calm and explained that a relative of ours had become seriously ill. This relative was my father's uncle, who had helped my dad at the start of his career. My uncle had been diagnosed with leukemia a few years ago and had squandered most of his fortune on gambling and drinking. His children had abandoned him, and he had no one else to take care of him. My father felt a deep sense of gratitude towards my uncle for the opportunities he had given him when he was young. So he decided to take care of him. My uncle's medical expenses were extremely high, and my father paid for everything. As a result, there was hardly any money left for my college tuition. My father had to consider his future and realized it would be very difficult to maintain our living standards if he paid for my college. He wanted me to develop the ability to cover my tuition on my own. I was still angry, but I couldn't deny that my father's story made sense. My uncle had indeed helped my father find his first job, and it was true that he had been abandoned by his family. My father's decision to care for him was admirable, even though it left me in a difficult position. I felt a mix of emotions: anger, understanding, and a sense of betrayal. I couldn't completely suppress my anger, but I also couldn't blame my father for his actions. After much thought, I decided to forgive my father. I told him that if necessary, I would find a way to cover my university tuition myself. I also said that if I really had to take out student loans, I hoped he could help me a little. My mother supported my decision, and my father promised to support me in any way he could. However, my mother seemed unsettled and appeared to be troubled. I could sense that something was bothering her, but she didn't say anything at the time. I believed that there were no particular problems between my parents, but my mother's distress made me wonder. I speculated that the reason for her distress might be that, unlike my sister, I would have to work while attending university. My mother apologized to me more times than my father did, and it was clear that this was a burden for her. I tried to reassure her, saying it was okay and not to worry. But deep down, I was still hurt and confused. I decided to look for other means to prepare for university. I resolved to work in the months leading up to my enrollment. Thanks to several internships I had done before, I had some savings, but they were hardly enough to contribute significantly to my tuition. I needed to cover the shortfall, and it felt like the ultimate choice for earning money. Eventually, it became clear that I had no choice but to take out student loans. I wanted to avoid this because I knew I would continue to face the pressure of repayment throughout my future career. I began researching how to start my own business. I've always had a strong interest in programming, and I've been learning it since childhood. I have skills beyond those of my peers, so I started thinking about how to earn money doing what I loved. I needed money to live, and I had been planning this slowly without telling anyone. I felt stressed but also determined. I wanted to prove to myself and my parents that I could be independent and successful. Last week, I came across an important fact that changed the way I viewed the people around me. It helped me understand where my father's money had gone or where it was heading. I had been talking about my sister so often because I had discovered something shocking. My sister and I are years apart, and we were never close. Our relationship was not bad, but it was not intimate either. We maintained a very neutral relationship. After I entered high school, my sister started treating me as if I were her rival. Our relationship became even more complicated after I graduated from high school. I think it was all her fault. She had just entered university and seemed to flaunt her success every time she came home. She acted as if she was showing off, and she became overtly aggressive towards me, ridiculing me more actively than before. I felt like she was trying to put me down, and it hurt. When I confronted her about her behavior, she would only say that I should take it lightly, as if it were just a joke. After entering university, I felt that she really became a terrible person. She still is a terrible person to this day. If not, I can't understand why she acted that way. After graduating from university, she worked for a few years at a small company, but she seemed unhappy there. She thought she was too big for that small world and was looking for something better. My sister constantly complained about her colleagues and claimed she was far superior to them. She made excuses that she couldn't find a better job because of external factors like the economy. In my opinion, the real reason she couldn't get a good job was her arrogant attitude. I felt it would be difficult to work with someone like her. Every time she came over, she would express her dissatisfaction during dinner time. My father would console her inflated ego by encouraging her that a better future awaited her. My sister and I do not follow each other on social media. In fact, I have blocked her. I have no interest in her personal life and no intention of meeting her. However, some of my friends do follow her out of curiosity. A week ago, a few friends sent me screenshots of my sister's posts. The content was a huge shock to me. It included a family photo, and of course, I was not in the picture. The caption expressed how grateful she was for our parents' help and mentioned that they were the initial investors in her business. My friends asked me how my parents could invest in my sister's business when they supposedly couldn't afford my university tuition. I was confused and hurt. I decided not to confront my parents immediately. I knew the truth would come out eventually. That day was tough for me. I felt like my parents were prioritizing my sister over me. I decided to leave home, feeling that they didn't care about me. I understood that my parents had a wonderful child, but I felt it wasn't me.